She smirked. "You'll be single forever," with such casual cruelty that I felt the words physically burrow under my skin, like little parasites that would feed on my self-worth for months to come. Funny thing about forever, though, it's a hell of a lot shorter than people think. Let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. You probably want the whole messy story, not just the highlight reel. Fair enough. 2 years and 3 months ago, I was dating this guy. Let's call him Chris. Tall, decent job in finance, the kind of conventional good looks that photograph well at family gatherings. We'd been together for almost 3 years. Not perfect, but comfortable. Like a pair of jeans you've had forever that maybe don't fit quite right anymore, but you still wear them because, well, effort. But this story isn't really about Chris. It's about Vanessa. Vanessa was his coworker, then his work friend, then his emotional affair, then his physical affair. The classic trajectory of these things, a slow-motion car crash I didn't see coming until I was already flying through the windshield. I first met her at Chris's holiday office party. My stomach actually clenched when she walked over. Some animal part of your brain just knows, you know? Her perfume smelled expensive in that deliberately understated way, the kind of scent that whispers rather than shouts, but somehow everyone still hears it. I remember thinking, what kind of psychopath wears 4-inch heels to a casual holiday party at a brewery? The kind hunting for someone else's boyfriend, apparently. For months, I ignored the signs. The late nights at work. The suddenly password-protected phone. The way he'd get irritated over nothing, like he was looking for fights to justify his guilt. All that classic cheater behavior that seems so obvious in hindsight, but feels like random coincidence when you're in it. Until that day. Oh, that fucking day! It was raining. One of those cold, mean spring rains that makes everything gray and miserable. I'd stopped by his office to surprise him with lunch because I thought we were in a rough patch that needed some effort. Some work lunches and date nights to reconnect. God, I was pathetic. I saw them in the parking garage. They didn't see me. They were standing close, too close, and she was laughing at something he said, her hand resting on his arm in that possessive way that tells the whole story. Something in me just knew. And instead of driving away, I sank down behind a concrete pillar and watched them, lunch bag growing damp in my grip. I became a different person in those moments, someone small and quiet and watchful, someone who could hurt. They kissed. Not a friendly goodbye peck, the kind of kiss that has history behind it, the kind that confirms all your worst suspicions in one horrible moment. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out with a melon baller. I remember thinking that was strange. Shouldn't it hurt more? Shouldn't I be crying or screaming? Instead, I just felt empty and cold, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. I waited until they separated, watched him go back inside. Then I followed her to her car. "Excuse me," I said, and my voice sounded so normal it surprised me. "Vanessa, right?" She turned, startled, then composed herself with practiced ease. Her eyes flicked over me, assessing, measuring, and I watched her calculate exactly who I was and what I might know. "Oh, you're Chris's girlfriend." The slightest emphasis on girlfriend, like it was a temporary, flimsy title. "What are you doing here?" I lifted the sad, rain-spotted paper bag. "Brought lunch for my boyfriend." Again, that strange calmness. "But it looks like he's already eaten." Her face did something complicated then. A flicker of guilt quickly replaced by something harder. Confident. Territorial. "Look," she said, her voice dripping with rehearsed compassion. "This is awkward, but Chris and I have gotten close lately. He's been meaning to talk to you." A delicate pause. "He feels like your relationship has run its course." My lungs seemed to shrink inside my chest. Not because this was news, I'd just watched them play tonsil hockey after all, but because of the audacity, the sheer fucking entitlement of this woman to deliver this news to me like she was doing me a favor. "Has he now?" I managed. "These things happen," she continued, her voice gentle in that condescending way people use with children or the elderly. "Sometimes people just grow apart, and sometimes they grow together, like you two." The words tasted like battery acid. That's when she did it. She tilted her head slightly, the corner of her mouth curling upward in a perfect practiced smirk, and said the words that would echo in my head for months. "I know this is hard, but between us girls, Chris has been unhappy for a long time. He needs someone who challenges him. Intellectually. Sexually." She adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder. "Don't take this the wrong way, but it's probably for the best. Some people just aren't meant for relationships. You'll be single forever, and that's okay. Not everyone gets the happily ever after." She smirked. "You'll be single forever, and she actually believed it. The rain plastered my hair to my face as I stood there, lunch bag dripping, ego shattered, heart somewhere down around my ankles. But underneath the humiliation, something hard and hot was forming. A diamond of rage compressed by pressure and heat. I'd like to tell you I said something cutting and clever. That I threw the soggy turkey sandwich at her perfect hair or keyed her luxury sedan. But the truth is, I just nodded, turned, and walked away. Some battles you don't fight in the moment, some you plan for. I went home and threw up. Twice. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and called my best friend, Maya. He's cheating. With Vanessa from work. I saw them. Maya didn't waste time with useless questions or hollow reassurances. I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid before I get there. While waiting, I scrolled through our photos together. 3 years of memories suddenly looked different, tainted. Every smile, every vacation, every stupid selfie, were they real? When did he stop loving me? When did I become someone you could discard so easily? My phone buzzed. A text from Chris. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. The familiar lie made something snap inside me. I typed back, no problem. Take your time. I'll be gone when you get home. Then I blocked his number, took a scalding hot shower, and started packing while Maya drove over. She found me randomly throwing things into suitcases. Mascara streaked down my face. Whoa, she said, taking the crumpled silk blouse from my hands. Let's slow down. Strategic retreat, not panicked flight? I crumpled onto the bed. She said I'll be single forever. Like I'm some defective model that no one would want. She's trying to hurt you because she's threatened, Maya said, sitting beside me. Basic insecure homewrecker psychology. But what if she's right? The question scraped my throat raw. What if there is something wrong with me? What if I am unlovable? Maya grabbed my shoulders. Listen to me. That bitch doesn't know you. She's creating a narrative that makes her the heroine instead of the villain. Don't you dare give her words power. But I already had. That's the thing about targeted cruelty. When someone finds your deepest insecurity and pokes it with a stick, it's hard not to believe they see some truth about you that you've been hiding from yourself. The next few days passed in a blur. I moved out while Chris was at work, leaving my key and a note so brief it was almost haiku. I saw you with Vanessa. We're done. Don't contact me. He tried anyway. Calls from different numbers. Emails. Even showed up at Maya's where I was staying. Classic guilty backpedaling. It wasn't what it looked like. It only happened a few times. I was going to end it. I still love you. Each pathetic excuse just confirmed I'd made the right choice. But it didn't stop the pain. Grief isn't linear. It's not even a proper cycle. It's more like being trapped in a game of emotional whack-a-mole. Just when you think you've squashed down the sadness, anger pops up. Tamp down the anger and up springs humiliation. On and on, relentless. I'd be fine at work, then catch myself staring blankly at my computer, mentally replaying that smirk. You'll be single forever. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, the words echoing in my head like a curse. You should get back out there, well-meaning friends suggested after a few weeks. Best way to get over someone is to get under someone else. Charming advice, but the thought of dating made me physically ill. Each Tinder profile I half-heartedly swiped through blurred into Chris's face. Each potential coffee date felt like walking willingly into another ambush. So I threw myself into other things. Work, the gym. I bleached my brown hair platinum blonde, got a tattoo I'd always wanted, enrolled in a photography class I'd been putting off because Chris thought it was a waste of time. Small reclamations of self. 2 months post-breakup, I was at a bar with Maya when I saw them together. Chris and Vanessa, officially a couple now, sharing a corner booth. His arm around her shoulders, her head tilted back in laughter at something he said. The sight hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't expected it to hurt so much, seeing them happy while I was still finding his stray socks in my laundry and waking up reaching for him. We should go, Maya said, noticing my frozen stare. No, something steely slid into place inside me. I'm not running. Instead, I walked directly to the bar, positioned myself where they could clearly see me if they looked up, and ordered a drink. Let them see me. Let them know I wasn't hiding or broken. It took 12 minutes. I counted. Vanessa spotted me first, her eyes widening slightly before she whispered to Chris. He turned, saw me, had the decency to look uncomfortable. I raised my glass in their direction, took a deliberate sip, and turned back to the bartender. Heart hammering, palms sweating, but outwardly calm. A small victory. They left 20 minutes later. As they passed, Vanessa paused, tugging Chris to a stop. Oh, hi! I didn't realize you'd be here. she said, voice syrupy with fake friendliness. I just smiled. Small world, an awkward beat of silence. Chris looking at the floor, then at the door, anywhere but at me. You look different, Vanessa offered, eyeing my new hair. It's brave. The subtle dig might have cut deep a few weeks ago. Now it just seemed pathetic. Change can be good, I said. You two should know all about that. Chris finally spoke. I hope you're doing okay. The concern in his voice made me want to throw my drink in his face, as if he had any right to care about my well-being after what he'd done. I'm getting there, I said. Another deliberate sip of my drink. You two enjoy your evening. They left, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her out, the same way he used to guide me. I made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Quick, hot, angry tears that I wiped away almost as fast as they fell. I stared at myself in the mirror. Blonde hair, red eyes, unfamiliar face of a woman in transition. You'll be single forever, I whispered to my reflection, testing the words, feeling their weight. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Maybe being single was better than being with someone who could throw away 3 years like it meant nothing. Maybe being alone was better than being a placeholder until something shinier came along. But as I splashed cold water on my face, a different thought emerged. One that wasn't about loneliness or fear or heartbreak. One that tasted like possibility. What if Vanessa was wrong? What if this wasn't my ending but my beginning? What if her smug certainty about my future was the biggest mistake she could have made? I dried my face, reapplied my lipstick, and went back to join Maya. You okay? She asked. No, I said honestly, but I will be. That night marked a turning point. Not because I was suddenly healed, grief doesn't work that way, but because something fundamental shifted inside me. The diamond of rage that had been forming since that rainy day in the parking garage began to take on a different shape. Less about pain, more about purpose. I wasn't just surviving the breakup anymore. I was starting to wonder what came next, what I wanted, who I could become without the comfortable constraints of who we had been together. I just didn't know yet how completely Vanessa's prediction would backfire, or that her smirk would become the catalyst for everything that followed. The thing about rock bottom is that once you're there, you've got nowhere to go but up. Or at least that's what people say to make you feel better when your life's gone to shit. But there's a truth to it. 3 months after the smirk incident, as Maya and I had taken to calling it, I was starting to rebuild. Not quickly, not gracefully, but deliberately. I'd moved into my own apartment, a small studio with good light for photography and terrible water pressure, but it was mine. No memories of Chris lingered in the corners or clung to the walls. Fresh start, clean slate, all those cliches that actually mean something when you're desperate for them to be true. One Tuesday evening, I was sorting through some old photos I'd finally gotten the courage to look at again. Not the relationship ones, those were still sealed in a box labeled evidence of poor judgment, but older ones, from before Chris. Photos of trips I'd taken, places I'd explored, the person I'd been when I answered only to myself. There was a particular shot from a hiking trip in Colorado, me on a mountain ridge, arms outstretched, face toward the sun. I remembered that moment with startling clarity. The feeling of standing above the world, lungs burning, muscles aching in that satisfying way that reminds you you're alive. I'd felt invincible that day. When had I stopped feeling invincible? When had I started to believe I needed someone else to be complete? My phone buzzed. A text from Maya, SOS. Need drink and sympathetic ear. My place in 30? I welcomed the distraction. Dwelling too much on the past was a dangerous game, like picking at a scab that's finally starting to heal. Maya was already on her second glass of wine when I arrived, pacing her small living room. You know Jason from accounting? She asked before I'd even taken off my coat. The one with the Star Wars collectibles and questionable hygiene? No, the one with the dimples and the Audi. Ah, cute Jason, not weird Jason. Continue. She flopped dramatically onto the couch. He's engaged. To some yoga instructor he's been dating for like 3 months. I poured myself a generous glass of whatever she was drinking. 3 months? That's insane? Reckless? A ticking time bomb of eventual divorce? I was going to say fast, but your descriptors work too. Maya stared morosely into her wine. Everyone's pairing off. My younger sister's pregnant, my cousin just got engaged, even my dentist is getting married. Meanwhile, I haven't had a second date in 8 months. I settled beside her on the couch, nudging her with my shoulder. Hey, I'm the one who got the Single Forever curse, remember? You're just having a temporary drought. At least your drought has an explanation. Mine's just the universe being a dick. She sighed. Sometimes I think Vanessa was right. Some people just aren't built for relationships. The casual mention of Vanessa's name still had the power to send a jolt through me, like touching an electric fence. Don't you dare let that snake get in your head too. I'm just saying, what if… No, I cut her off, surprising myself with the force in my voice. That's exactly what she wants. For her words to burrow in and make us doubt ourselves. To make us small. Maya looked at me curiously. You sound different when you talk about her now. Less hurt, more pissed off? I suggested. Determined. The word hung between us. Determined. Yes, that fit the hardening resolve I'd been feeling lately. I ran into Marcus last week, Maya said after a moment, a deliberate casualness in her tone that immediately made me suspicious. Marcus? Chris's best friend? From college? You met him at that 4th of July thing last year. I vaguely remembered a tall guy with glasses and an encyclopedic knowledge of craft beers. Okay, and we got to talking. She swirled her wine. About things? People. Couples we know. I narrowed my eyes. Maya. He said some interesting things about Chris and Vanessa. She took a deliberate sip. Things you might want to hear. My stomach tightened. I don't need more details about their sex life or how happy they are or they're not happy. The words stopped me cold. What? Maya leaned forward. According to Marcus, they're fighting constantly. Chris is miserable. Apparently, Vanessa's is spontaneous and passionate nature, which is how Chris justified cheating, by the way, translates to controlling and jealous in an actual relationship. A complicated feeling washed over me. Not quite satisfaction, not quite vindication, but something adjacent to both. Why are you telling me this? I asked cautiously. Because I thought you'd want to know karma's doing its job? She shrugged. Or because misery loves company and I'm currently wallowing in self-pity. I considered this information, turning it over like a strange object I'd found on the beach. It doesn't change anything, I said finally. What they did. How it ended. No, Maya agreed. But it might change how you feel about it. And oddly enough, it did. Not in the way I might have expected 6 months ago when I was still raw and bleeding. Back then, news of their relationship struggles would have felt like sweet vindication. Proof that I wasn't the problem after all. Now it just felt instructive. Like finishing a novel and finally understanding the foreshadowing from earlier chapters. Of course they were unhappy. Chris was a conflict avoider who ran from problems instead of facing them. Vanessa was the kind of person who delivered crushing blows with a smile. They deserved each other in the most literal sense possible. That night, lying in bed, I found myself thinking about that conversation. About determination. About karma and its insufficient pace. You'll be single forever. Vanessa had smirked. The words had less power now, but they still pulsed with meaning. Not as a curse, but as a challenge. A gauntlet thrown. What would be the ultimate refutation of that smug prediction? Finding someone new? Getting married? Having some picture-perfect life to shove in her face? Maybe. But those things shouldn't be about her at all. They should be about me, what I wanted, who I chose to become. Still, as I drifted towards sleep, an idea began to form. Hazy at first, then gaining definition. A plan that would require patience. Strategy. A complete reinvention. Something that would wipe that smirk off her face forever. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day doing research. Social media stalking mostly, but the targeted, methodical kind. Not the sad ex-girlfriend variety I'd indulged in during those first raw weeks. Chris's accounts were easy. I still knew all his habits, his friends, his patterns. Vanessa required more digging, but people who crave attention leave digital footprints everywhere. Between Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and some strategic Google searches, I pieced together a comprehensive picture. They were living together already, moving fast, just like Maya had said. Vanessa had recently been promoted at work. They frequented the same handful of restaurants and bars, and most interestingly, they seemed to be spending a lot of time with a particular social circle, Chris's college friends, including Marcus. I started a document. Names, connections, locations. It sounds creepy when I put it like that, but it felt clarifying. Like I was mapping a territory I needed to understand. One name kept appearing in their social media orbit, Ryan Chambers. He was tagged in several group photos with them, always standing slightly apart from the crowd. In one picture, he was looking at Vanessa with an expression I recognized all too well, the careful neutrality that masks deeper feelings. I dug deeper. Ryan Chambers, 32, former college roommate of Chris's, now a successful architectural engineer at a firm downtown. Recently divorced, according to a sympathetic comment Chris had left on a Facebook post from about 8 months ago. Something clicked. A half-remembered conversation from early in our relationship, Chris talking about his buddy Ryan, who had married his college girlfriend right after graduation. "Poor bastard," Chris had said. Tied himself down before he even knew who he was. I stared at Ryan's profile picture. Tall, with the kind of face that photography doesn't do justice to, more striking than conventionally handsome. Dark hair, serious eyes, not smiling for the camera but not looking miserable either. Just present. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The plan wasn't fully formed yet, more of an outline with blank spaces to be filled in. But the basic shape of it thrilled me in a way nothing had in months. I would meet Ryan Chambers. I would get to know him. And eventually, if everything aligned just right, I would date him. Not because I was interested in him, though from my research, he seemed interesting enough. Not because I wanted a relationship, the thought still made my stomach clench with anxiety, but because there could be no more perfect refutation of Vanessa's prediction than for me to end up with someone from their inner circle. Someone who knew them both. Someone whose presence in my life would be impossible for them to ignore. It was petty. It was elaborate. It would take time and effort and a level of manipulation I wasn't entirely comfortable with. But goddamn, it would be worth it to see the look on her face. The execution would be tricky. I couldn't just walk up to him and introduce myself. The connection to Chris would be too obvious. I needed to engineer a natural meeting, something that couldn't be traced back to my relationship with Chris. I spent the next few weeks gathering intelligence and laying groundwork. Ryan, it turned out, was a creature of habit. He went to the same coffee shop most mornings before work, a place about 6 blocks from my apartment. He played pickup basketball at a community center on Thursday evenings. And according to an Instagram post from 2 weeks ago, he had recently joined a photography class at the community college. Photography. My mind raced. I'd been taking classes for months now, building a decent portfolio. The community college offered several levels of instruction. I called and asked about their advanced class. "The current session is full," the administrator told me, "but we're starting a new one in 3 weeks." "What about the intermediate class? The one that meets on Tuesday evenings?" A pause, some typing. "That one still has 3 spots open." Bingo. According to Ryan's public Google Calendar, people really should be more careful with their privacy settings. That was the class he'd joined. "Perfect," I said. "I'd like to register." The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation. I threw myself into photography with renewed passion, making sure my skills were sharp enough to justify the intermediate class. I revamped my wardrobe, not drastically, but enough to feel confident. I practiced versions of my backstory, true in broad strokes, strategically vague in the details. Most importantly, I worked on myself. Not just for the plan, but for me. I started jogging in the mornings, more for the mental clarity than physical changes. I read books I'd been putting off. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the relationship. With each passing day, I felt more like the woman in that Colorado hiking photo, arms outstretched, face to the sun, invincible. The night before the first photography class, Maya came over to help me choose an outfit. "Let me get this straight," she said, rifling through my closet. "You've signed up for a class you don't need to accidentally meet the ex-roommate of your ex-boyfriend, who is currently dating the woman who destroyed your relationship, with the ultimate goal of making her prediction about me being single forever spectacularly wrong." I finished. Maya pulled out a casual blue sweater, considered it, then put it back. "Don't you think that's a lot of effort just to prove Vanessa wrong?" "It's not just about proving her wrong." I sat on the edge of my bed. "It's about reclaiming the narrative. Taking control after months of feeling powerless. And ... I hesitated. And maybe finding out who I am without defining myself in relation to Chris, or Vanessa, or their opinion of me." Maya gave me a long look, then pulled out a simple green blouse that brought out my eyes. This, casual but flattering. Serious enough for someone interested in photography, not trying too hard. I took the blouse, suddenly nervous. What if this whole thing is ridiculous? What if I'm still letting them control my life by basing my decisions on them? Then you'll have taken an interesting photography class and potentially met some new people. She shrugged. Worst case scenario, you learn something and move on. Best case. Best case, I engineer the perfect revenge by dating someone from their social circle and making Vanessa eat her words. I finished. I was going to say best case, you might actually like this Ryan guy, but sure, your version works too. Maya sat beside me. Just promise me one thing? What? Don't lose yourself in this plan. If at any point it starts to feel wrong or harmful to you, walk away. No revenge is worth compromising who you are. I nodded, though part of me wondered if I even knew who I was anymore. The past 6 months had changed me in ways I was still discovering. But maybe that was the point. Maybe this wasn't just about proving Vanessa wrong. Maybe it was about proving something to myself. The community college classroom was half full when I arrived the next evening, camera bag over my shoulder, heart pounding unreasonably hard. I scanned the room quickly, trying not to be obvious. There he was, setting up a tripod in the back corner. Ryan Chambers in the flesh, taller than his photos suggested, focused on the task at hand. I chose a seat not too close but within conversation distance, close enough to create an opportunity, far enough to seem coincidental. The instructor began by asking everyone to introduce themselves and share what they hoped to learn. When my turn came, I kept it simple. I'm Alexis. I've been doing photography as a hobby for a few years, mostly landscapes and street scenes. I'd like to get better at capturing people, finding the story in a face. Simple, honest enough. Nothing that would raise flags if Chris or Vanessa ever heard it repeated. Class progressed smoothly, with instruction on composition and lighting. The assignment was to partner up and practice portrait photography, capturing emotion rather than just appearance. My pulse quickened. I hadn't expected an opportunity to present itself so perfectly, so quickly. As people began pairing off, I deliberately took my time organizing my equipment, waiting to see who might be left without a partner. Excuse me. I looked up. Ryan Chambers stood beside my desk, camera in hand, expression politely questioning. Would you like to partner up? I'm terrible at portraits, so fair warning. His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with a slight roughness around the edges. Up close, his eyes were even more intense, dark brown with flecks of amber. I smiled, hoping my expression conveyed friendly interest without anything more. Sure, why not? I'm Alexis. Ryan. He extended his hand and I shook it firmly. Nice to meet you. And just like that, the plan was in motion. The first step of a journey that would lead to places I couldn't yet imagine. A journey that started with a smirk and a prediction, but would end very differently than Vanessa had ever anticipated. I just didn't know then how much would change along the way, or how right and wrong I would be about everything that followed. The thing about elaborate revenge plans is they don't account for actual human emotions, like how fucking inconvenient it is to develop real feelings for someone who was supposed to be nothing more than a chess piece in your grand scheme. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Ryan and I partnered up for those photography assignments every Tuesday, and something unexpected happened. We clicked. Not romantically, not yet, but in that rare way where conversation flows without effort, where silences feel comfortable instead of awkward. He was thoughtful in a way Chris never had been, considering questions fully before answering them. When I showed him my Colorado mountain ridge photo during a discussion on landscape composition, he studied it with genuine interest. There's something powerful here, he said, tapping the image. The person in this shot? Me? I supplied. His eyebrows raised slightly. You look triumphant, like you've conquered something more than just a mountain. It was such a perceptive observation that I felt momentarily speechless. I finally said. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship. That trip was my declaration of independence. The irony of using that story, true but from years before, wasn't lost on me. I was building connection through selective truth-telling, laying groundwork for my revenge while keeping my actual motives hidden. Or at least that's what I told myself as we began spending time together outside of class. Coffee after our Tuesday sessions turned into occasional lunches. Lunches evolved into weekend photography excursions to capture interesting architecture, his passion, or street scenes, mine. I kept waiting for him to mention Chris or Vanessa, to make some connection that would expose my plan or force me to reveal my hand too early. But he never did, which led me to wonder if they were as close as social media had suggested. Then, about 6 weeks in, it finally happened. We were at a small gallery opening, something Ryan had invited me to because the featured photographer specialized in architectural studies. I'd dressed carefully, casual enough not to seem like I was trying too hard, stylish enough to make an impression if we happened to run into anyone he knew. This one's remarkable, he said, gesturing to a black and white cityscape. The way the light catches the edge of the— Ryan! Thought that was you. I turned and felt the floor shift beneath me. Chris. standing 5 feet away, drink in hand, surprise registering on his face as he recognized me. "Chris, hey," Ryan said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Didn't expect to see you here. Art openings aren't usually your scene?" Vanessa wanted to check it out. Chris's eyes hadn't left my face. "She's getting drinks. How do you two know each other?" Before I could answer, Ryan said, "Photography class. Alexis is incredibly talented." He glanced between us, sensing the tension. "Do you two know each other?" The moment stretched, taut with unspoken history. I could see the calculations happening behind Chris's eyes. What to say, how much to reveal, how this would affect his carefully constructed narrative about our breakup. "We used to date," I said simply, deciding to take control of the story. "It ended badly." Ryan's expression shifted into something unreadable. It's been what, 8 months?" Chris said, attempting a casual tone that fell hopelessly flat. 7.5, I corrected. "But who's counting?" The awkwardness was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Part of me savored it, this discomfort I'd caused just by existing in the wrong place at the right time. Another part felt oddly detached, like I was watching the scene unfold from above. "How's Vanessa?" I asked, my voice pleasant, my eyes hard. Chris flinched slightly. "She's good." "Great, actually. We're right here," came a familiar voice. The line at the bar was ridiculous, and there she was, appearing at Chris's side with 2 wine glasses, that perfect posture, that expertly applied makeup. Her eyes widened fractionally when she saw me, then narrowed in assessment as she noticed Ryan beside me. "Vanessa." She introduced herself to Ryan, shifting both glasses to one hand to extend the other. "I don't think we've met." "Ryan Chambers. I'm a friend of Chris's from college." He shook her hand, his tone neutral. "And apparently Alexis's ex." Vanessa's gaze snapped to me, then back to Ryan, processing this new information with visible calculation. "What a small world," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "How long have you two been friends?" The emphasis she placed on the last word was subtle but unmistakable. The implication clear, I must have sought Ryan out deliberately because of his connection to Chris. She was circling close to the truth, but for all the wrong reasons. "A couple months," Ryan answered before I could. "We met in a photography class." "How serendipitous," Vanessa said, taking a deliberate sip of her wine. Her eyes never left mine, assessing, measuring. I could practically see the wheels turning behind them. "Very," I agreed, maintaining eye contact. "Life has a way of creating interesting connections." The 4 of us stood there, locked in a bizarre tableau of forced civility layered over churning undercurrents. I could feel Ryan watching me, sensing there was more to this interaction than a simple awkward ex encounter. "Well," Chris finally said, "we should probably make the rounds." "Good to see you, Ryan." "And you too, Alexis." Vanessa wasn't ready to leave. "We should all get together sometime," she suggested, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Double date, once you two are official." The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. She thought she was calling my bluff, assuming Ryan and I weren't actually together, that I'd fabricated or exaggerated our relationship to save face. Before I could respond, Ryan's arm slid around my waist, casual but definitive. "That might be fun," he said, "though I'm not sure how official we need to be. We're enjoying the journey rather than rushing to label things." I leaned into his side, playing along with a gratitude so intense it caught me off guard. "Exactly," I agreed. "Some people move faster than others." Vanessa's smile tightened at the edges. "Point scored. We'll be in touch," she said, already turning away. "Come on, Chris. I want to see the installation in the back room." Once they were out of earshot, Ryan's arm dropped from my waist. He turned to face me, expression serious. "So that's the ex, huh?" I nodded, my heart still hammering. "And his new girlfriend? The one he cheated with?" My eyes snapped to his. "How did you—" "Chris and I aren't as close as we once were, but news travels." His voice was gentle. "I'm sorry that happened to you." The genuine compassion in his eyes made my cheeks burn with shame. Here I was, executing an elaborate revenge scheme involving him, and he was offering me sincere sympathy. "It was a while ago," I said, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. "Ancient history." Ryan studied me for a long moment. Didn't look like ancient history from where I was standing. I couldn't tell if he was suspicious or just perceptive. Either way, I needed to redirect. "Sorry you got dragged into that awkwardness." The arm around the waist was a nice touch, though. "Seemed like you could use the backup." He smiled slightly. "Vanessa's intense. That's one word for her." "Want to get out of here?" he suggested. "I know a place with excellent whiskey and zero chance of running into more exes." Relief washed over me. God, yes. The bar he took me to was a small speakeasy-style place hidden behind a bookstore. Dark wood, jazz playing softly, bartenders who treated cocktail making like a religious experience. We settled into a corner booth, the low lighting creating a bubble of privacy. "So," he said after we'd ordered, "that's why you tensed up whenever I mentioned group outings. You were worried about running into Chris." I'd forgotten how observant he was. Was it that obvious? Only to someone paying attention. He paused. "I should probably tell you that Chris and I aren't actually that close anymore. We were in college and we stayed in touch, but things changed. This was unexpected." "What happened?" Ryan considered his words carefully. "Let's just say I don't always agree with his choices or how he treats people." There was more to that story, but I didn't press. Instead, I asked, "If you're not close, why did you play along back there? With the arm and the 'we're enjoying the journey' line?" He shrugged. "Because Vanessa was clearly trying to put you in an uncomfortable position, and that seemed unfair." Our drinks arrived, an old-fashioned for him, a Manhattan for me. I took a sip, using the moment to gather my thoughts. "I should be honest with you," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Honesty hadn't been part of the plan. When Vanessa and Chris came over, I was glad. I wanted them to see me with someone else, to think I'd moved on. It wasn't the full truth, but it was more than I'd intended to reveal. Ryan nodded slowly. "That's pretty normal after what you went through." "Is it normal to feel a little thrill when you see the look on their faces? To want them to think you're happier without them?" "Completely normal." He raised his glass slightly. "To being better off without certain people in our lives." I clinked my glass against his. "I can drink to that." That night marked a shift. Ryan and I had shared something real amidst all my careful calculations and half-truths. And in the weeks that followed, those real moments began to multiply. He showed me his favorite buildings in the city, explaining the architectural elements that made them special. I taught him how to find the perfect, candid street photography shots, the moments between moments that tell the most honest stories. We developed inside jokes, preferences for the same obscure coffee shop, a shared hatred for pretentious artist statements, the kinds of connections that can't be strategized or planned, which presented a problem for my revenge scheme. A significant problem? I was starting to like him. Not as Chris's former friend, not as a tool in my elaborate plan, but as himself. Ryan. The realization hit me one Sunday afternoon as we were editing photos from a shoot at the Botanical Gardens. We were sitting in his apartment, laptops open, debating the merits of different crops and filters. He said something, I don't even remember what, and I laughed, and suddenly I was aware of how comfortable I felt with him, how much I enjoyed his company, how much I dreaded the moment he would discover my original motivations. Because he would, eventually. My plan had always culminated in Vanessa learning I was dating Ryan, seeing her prediction crumble before her eyes. But that meant Ryan would learn the truth too. That our meeting wasn't coincidental. That I'd sought him out specifically because of his connection to Chris. I closed my laptop abruptly. "I should go." Ryan looked up, surprised. "Everything okay?" "Just remembered I promised Maya I'd help her with something." The lie tasted bitter. "Rain check?" He walked me to the door, concern evident in his expression. "Sure. Text me when you get home?" I nodded, suddenly desperate to escape before I confessed everything in a fit of conscience. Back in my apartment, I paced, phone in hand, debating whether to call Maya. She'd warned me about exactly this scenario, getting lost in the plan, compromising who I was. But admitting she was right felt like admitting defeat. Instead, I opened Instagram and did what any rational adult would do. I stalked Vanessa's profile. Her most recent post was from the previous evening, her and Chris at some rooftop bar, his arm around her shoulders, her smile wide for the camera. The caption read, "Making memories with this one heart eyes cause blessed chas couple goals." But it was the photo after that caught my eye. Vanessa in a sleek dress at what appeared to be a work function, accepting some kind of award. The caption, "So honored to receive the Quarterly Excellence Award at work. Hard work pays off. Girl boss killing it." The comments were full of congratulations, including one from Chris. "So proud of you, babe. You deserve everything coming your way." I stared at that comment, something cold and clear crystallizing inside me. You deserve everything coming your way. Yes, she did. Just not in the way Chris meant. The initial plan had been simple. Date Ryan long enough to flaunt it in front of Vanessa, proving her single forever. Prediction wrong. But that seemed insufficient now. Too brief. Too easily dismissed. What if instead Ryan and I became a serious couple? What if we integrated into social circles that would inevitably overlap with Chris and Vanessa's? What if we became the couple everyone admired, while their relationship showed its inevitable cracks? The long game, the slow burn, the kind of revenge that unfolds so gradually the target doesn't even realize it's happening until it's too late. But there was a fatal flaw in this new plan. It required genuine feelings from Ryan, real commitment. And while I was starting to develop those feelings, I had no guarantee he felt the same. More importantly, any relationship built on my original deception would be compromised from the start. I was trapped in a paradox of my own making. To truly get revenge, I needed a real relationship with Ryan. But any real relationship would be poisoned by the revenge that motivated it in the first place. There was only one solution, though it terrified me. I had to tell him the truth, all of it, and hope that whatever was growing between us was strong enough to survive my confession. But not yet. Not until I was sure he cared enough that the truth might matter to him. That he might forgive what I'd done because losing me would hurt more than his pride. So I kept going, building something real on a foundation of calculation. Letting myself care while maintaining just enough emotional distance to protect my heart if everything imploded, which it inevitably would. The only question was when. 2 more months passed this way. Ryan and I settled into something that looked increasingly like a relationship, though neither of us had applied the label. We spent most weekends together. He kept a toothbrush at my place. I knew how he took his coffee and which songs would make him grimace when they came on the radio. We ran into Chris and Vanessa twice more during this time. Once at a restaurant, they left quickly, and once at a mutual friend's birthday party. They stayed but kept their distance. Each encounter charged the air with unspoken tension, but nothing exploded. Not yet. Then came the invitation. Marcus is having people over for a housewarming thing next weekend. Ryan mentioned one evening as we were cooking dinner at his place. He just bought a condo downtown. Said I should bring you. My hand paused over the vegetables I was chopping. Marcus, who's friends with Chris? That Marcus? Ryan nodded, watching me carefully. Chris and Vanessa will probably be there, he acknowledged. But so will a dozen other people. We don't have to go if you're not comfortable with it. The perfect opportunity had just presented itself, an intimate gathering where Vanessa would be forced to witness Ryan and me together, happy, coupled, where the contrast between her prediction and my reality would be unavoidable. No, we should go, I said, resuming my chopping with renewed vigor. I'm not going to let them dictate where we can and can't go. Ryan smiled, relieved. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The week leading up to the housewarming, I was a bundle of anticipation and anxiety. What would I wear? How should we act around them? How obvious should I make it that Ryan and I were together? More importantly, was I ready to face potential confrontation? Because Vanessa wasn't the type to let sleeping dogs lie. If she felt threatened or upstaged, she'd strike, and I needed to be prepared for whatever she might say or do. The night of the party arrived. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple black dress that showcased the results of my renewed gym commitment, paired with the emerald earrings Ryan had given me for my birthday. The effect was subtle but striking, confident without trying too hard. You look beautiful, Ryan said when he picked me up, his eyes warm with appreciation. For a moment, I forgot about Vanessa and Chris and revenge. For a moment, I was just a woman going to a party with a man she was falling for. But reality reasserted itself when we arrived at Marcus's new condo. Even before we entered, I could hear Vanessa's distinctive laugh floating down the hallway. The sound sent a familiar chill up my spine, followed by a surge of determination. Game on. Marcus greeted us warmly, taking our wine contribution and introducing us to people we didn't know. The condo was beautiful, open concept, floor-to-ceiling windows with a city view, the kind of place that appeared in architectural magazines. I spotted Chris and Vanessa across the room, deep in conversation with another couple. Vanessa looked up as we entered, her gaze locking onto mine for a brief, charged moment before returning to her conversation. But I'd seen the flicker of surprise. The quick assessment. Good. Ryan's hand found the small of my back, grounding me. Drink? He asked. Please. As Ryan went to get us drinks, I circulated, chatting with people I knew vaguely through him, keeping Vanessa in my peripheral vision, waiting for the inevitable moment our paths would cross. It came sooner than expected. I was admiring the view from the balcony when she appeared beside me, wineglass in hand. Quite a vista, she said, gesturing toward the skyline. Though I imagine you're enjoying the view inside even more. I turned to face her fully, determined to maintain control of the interaction. Marcus has a beautiful place. I meant Ryan. Her smile was calculated. You two seem close. We are. I kept my voice neutral, though my heart was racing. How interesting that of all the men in the city, you happened to find one with connections to Chris. She took a deliberate sip of her wine. Almost like you sought him out deliberately. And there it was, the accusation I'd been waiting for. The suspicion that would be completely justified if she had all the facts. Actually, we met in a photography class, I said, which was technically true. The connection to Chris was a surprise to both of us. A small world moment. She clearly didn't believe me. And now you're what exactly? Friends with benefits? Casual dating? Or are you trying to make it seem more serious than it is? The dismissiveness in her tone sparked genuine anger. As if I couldn't possibly have something real with Ryan. As if I was still the pathetic ex trying to prove something. Why are you so interested in defining my relationship, Vanessa? I asked, my voice deceptively soft. Is it because you're not secure enough in your own? Her eyes narrowed fractionally. Chris and I are very happy. I'm glad. So are Ryan and I. We stared at each other, the pretense of civility wearing thin. You know, she said finally, when I told you you'd be single forever, I meant it as a kindness. Some people aren't built for relationships. They're too needy, too insecure. They drive partners away. Is that what Chris told you about me? I asked, genuinely curious. That I was needy and insecure? She smiled slightly. Among other things, I should have been hurt. Should have felt the sting of this confirmation that Chris had vilified me to justify his betrayal. Instead, I felt strangely calm, detached almost. You know what's interesting about predictions, Vanessa? They reveal more about the person making them than the future they claim to foresee. I took a sip of my drink. Your certainty that I'd be single forever says a lot about your own fears. Her composure slipped just for a moment, a flash of something vulnerable behind the perfect makeup and practiced smile. You don't know anything about me, she said. I know you needed to believe I was fundamentally unlovable to justify stealing my boyfriend. The words came easily now, flowing from a place of clarity rather than pain. I know you're still trying to convince yourself that what you did was somehow inevitable or justified, rather than just selfish and cruel. Her face flushed. You have no idea what was going on in your relationship. Chris was unhappy long before. I'm not interested in rehashing the past, I interrupted. What Chris did, what you did, it's done. But here's what you should know. Your prediction was wrong. Not just because I'm with Ryan now, but because being single was never the punishment you thought it was. I leaned slightly closer, making sure no one else could hear my next words. The months I spent alone after Chris were some of the most important of my life. I rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten, built a life I'm proud of. So even if Ryan and I hadn't found each other, I would still have proven you wrong. I smiled genuinely then. But I have to admit this outcome is particularly satisfying. The balcony door slid open and Ryan appeared, 2 fresh drinks in hand. Everything okay out here? He asked, eyes moving between us. Perfect timing, I said, taking the drink he offered. Vanessa and I were just catching up. Vanessa's expression had hardened into something brittle and defensive. Yes, Alexis was telling me how you two met. Such a lucky coincidence. The emphasis she placed on the last word made my stomach drop. The accusation was clear. This wasn't coincidence but calculation. Ryan's eyes found mine, questioning. I held my breath, waiting for him to connect the dots, to realize I'd manipulated our meeting from the start. But he just smiled easily. The universe works in mysterious ways, he said, his arm sliding around my waist in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Vanessa looked between us, frustration evident in the tight set of her mouth. Whatever reaction she'd hoped to provoke, a fight, a revelation, a breakdown, wasn't materializing. Well, she said finally, I should get back to Chris. Enjoy your evening. As she walked away, Ryan turned to me. What was that about? I hesitated, knowing I was at a crossroads. I could offer some sanitized version of our conversation, could maintain the deception a little longer, or I could take the risk I'd been avoiding for months. We need to talk, I said quietly. Not here. But later, there's something I need to tell you. Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by concern. Is everything okay? I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on you, I think. The rest of the party passed in a blur of small talk and anticipation. I caught Vanessa watching us several times, her expression calculating. I could almost see her mind working, wondering if she should tell Ryan about her suspicions. Wondering if she could drive a wedge between us. But as the evening wore on, she seemed to reach a decision. I watched her whisper something to Chris, saw him glance our way with a frown, then shake his head slightly. Whatever she was suggesting, he wasn't on board. Finally, mercifully, it was time to leave. Ryan and I said our goodbyes, thanked Marcus for the invitation, and headed out. The tension between us was palpable as we rode the elevator down in silence. "My place or yours?" Ryan asked when we reached his car. "Yours," I decided. If this was going to get ugly, I wanted the option to leave rather than having to ask him to go. The drive was quiet, not the comfortable silence we'd grown accustomed to, but something heavier, expectant. I stared out the window, rehearsing what I would say, how I would explain the inexcusable. When we reached his apartment, he poured us both a whiskey without asking, then sat beside me on the couch, leaving careful space between us. "Whatever it is," he said, "just tell me." I took a deep breath, then another. The moment of truth had arrived and I was terrified. Because somewhere along the way, this man had become important to me. More important than my revenge. More important than proving Vanessa wrong. "Our meeting wasn't an accident," I said finally, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. "I deliberately sought you out because of your connection to Chris and Vanessa." Ryan's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten slightly around his glass. "Go on." So I did. I told him everything. About Vanessa's prediction in the parking garage. About my months of grief and rage. About seeing his name in their social media and deciding he was the perfect vehicle for my revenge. About engineering our coincidental meeting in the photography class. I laid it all bare, ugly and raw and true. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, staring into his whiskey as if it held answers. "Say something," I whispered finally. "Anything." He looked up, his eyes unreadable. "When did it change?" "What? When did I stop being a pawn in your revenge plan and start being—" He gestured between us. "This. Whatever we are." The question caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, accusations, an immediate end to whatever we'd built, not this quiet inquiry into the evolution of my feelings. "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "It was gradual. After the gallery opening, maybe. When you defended me against Vanessa without even knowing the full story." I swallowed hard. "But it did change. That's why I'm telling you now. Because what's between us feels real, and I can't keep building it on a lie." Ryan nodded slowly, processing. "So tonight, with Vanessa on the balcony, she accused me of deliberately seeking you out because of Chris. She was right, though not for the reasons she thinks." I laughed shakily. "The irony is, my grand revenge plan was to date you long enough to prove her wrong, then— I don't know. I didn't think much beyond that point. And now? Now I don't care about proving her wrong. I care about not losing you." The admission cost me, exposing a vulnerability I'd protected fiercely since Chris's betrayal. "But I understand if this is unforgivable." Ryan set his glass down and stood, pacing the length of his living room. I watched him, heart in my throat, waiting for the axe to fall. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I need some time to think about this. Not forgiveness. Not rejection. Just space. I could work with that." I stood, gathering my purse. "I understand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for everything. I can't regret meeting you, even under false pretenses. But I'm sorry for not being honest sooner. For risking whatever this is between us for something as petty as revenge." At the door, I paused, hand on the knob. "Should I call you? Or will you call me? Or is this a don't call me, I'll call you situation?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'll call you. Just give me a few days." I nodded, throat tight. "Okay." Outside, I waited until I was in the Uber before letting the tears come. Hot, silent tears of fear and regret, and the terrible certainty that I'd destroyed something precious for the sake of a plan that had ceased to matter weeks ago. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, but mercifully said nothing, just handed back a travel pack of tissues. I texted Maya as soon as I got home. It all fell apart. "Can you come over?" Her response was immediate. "On my way." "Wine or whiskey?" "Whiskey," I replied. "Definitely whiskey." While I waited for her, I kicked off my heels and changed into sweatpants, removing all traces of the carefully constructed image I'd presented at the party. The woman who'd stood toe-to-toe with Vanessa and emerged victorious was gone, replaced by someone more vulnerable, more real. My phone buzzed with a text notification. I lunged for it, hoping against hope it might be Ryan, but it was an Instagram alert. I almost ignored it, then curiosity got the better of me. Vanessa had posted a photo from the party. Her and Chris, champagne glasses raised, perfect smiles in place. The caption, "Another amazing evening with friends." So blessed to have found my perfect match. To forever love are no regrets. I stared at it, waiting for the familiar surge of anger or jealousy. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange sort of pity. For her, for Chris, for the fragile edifice of happiness they were so desperately trying to maintain. Because I'd seen the cracks tonight. In the way Chris pulled away when she touched him too possessively. In the forced brightness of her laugh when he told a story she'd clearly heard too many times. In the separate conversations they had with others, rarely circling back to check in with each other. They weren't happy. They were performing happiness, which isn't the same thing at all. And in that moment, looking at their carefully curated image of couple perfection, I realized something profound. I didn't need revenge anymore. Not because I'd already achieved it, or because it wasn't worth the cost. But because I genuinely didn't care. Vanessa's prediction had hurt because it had tapped into my deepest fear, that I was somehow unlovable, destined for loneliness. But that fear had dissolved over the past months, replaced by a certainty that I was enough on my own. That partnership was a choice, not a validation of worth. The doorbell rang. Maya, with whiskey and sympathy. I set my phone down, leaving Vanessa's perfect Instagram life behind as I went to answer the door. The revenge plan was officially over. The only question that remained was whether what I'd found in the process, a genuine connection with Ryan, a stronger sense of self, would survive its messy origins. And that was entirely out of my hands now. They say waiting is the hardest part. They're right. The 5 days after my confession to Ryan were among the longest of my life. I went to work. I came home. I stared at my phone. I didn't sleep much. Maya was a saint. Checking in daily, bringing takeout one night when I couldn't muster the energy to feed myself. She didn't say, "I told you so," though she had every right to. "What will you do if he doesn't call?" She asked on day 4, both of us curled on my couch with wine glasses that had been refilled one too many times. Move to Alaska. Change my name. Start a new life photographing moose. I sighed, letting my head fall back against the cushions. Or, survive. Like I did after Chris. Like we all do. The truth was, losing Ryan would hurt differently than losing Chris had. With Chris, I'd lost something comfortable but stagnant. With Ryan, I'd be losing possibility, potential. The kind of connection that doesn't come along often. For what it's worth, Maya said, "I think he'll call." I didn't share her optimism, but I appreciated the lie. On day 6, when I'd begun to accept that silence was his answer, my phone rang while I was in the middle of a grocery store, debating whether ice cream was an acceptable dinner option. Spoiler, it is. Unknown number. My heart jumped anyway. "Hello? It's me." Ryan's voice. "Can we talk?" In person. 20 minutes later, we were sitting on a bench in the park near my apartment, fall leaves swirling around our feet. The symbolic poetry wasn't lost on me. Everything in transition, nothing quite settled. "I kept waiting to feel angry," he said after an initial awkward silence, "to feel used or manipulated. But it didn't come." I studied his profile, afraid to hope. "Why not?" "Because I think I understand." He turned to face me fully. "After my divorce, I wanted to hurt my ex. I fantasized about running into her with someone beautiful on my arm. I even went to places I knew she frequented, hoping for the chance. This was news to me." "You never mentioned that." "It's not exactly first date material." A wry smile touched his lips. "The difference is I never followed through. But I wanted to. I understood the impulse." My breath caught. "So you're not angry?" "I didn't say that." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm disappointed you weren't honest sooner. I'm concerned about what it says about us that you kept this secret so long. But mostly," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "mostly, I'm sad you felt you needed elaborate schemes to prove your worth to someone who never deserved your time in the first place." The tears came then, hot and sudden. "I didn't realize that's what I was doing until it was too late. Until you were already too important to lose." Ryan reached over, tentatively taking my hand. "Here's what I think. I think Chris and Vanessa are still living in your head rent-free. I think your focus on proving her wrong has been keeping you tied to her, to them, long after you should have moved on." The accuracy of his assessment was like a physical blow. "You're right," I whispered. "So my question is, what do you want now? Not to prove Vanessa wrong, not to get revenge? Just for you." No one had asked me that in a very long time. Maybe no one ever had. What did I want, stripped of all the reactive motivations and defensive posturing? "I want to be happy," I said finally, the simplicity of it startling me. "I want to take photographs that mean something. I want to stop defining myself in relation to people who hurt me." I took a breath, gathering courage. And I want to see where this thing between us might go. For real this time. No agendas, no schemes. Just us. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. I want that too. You do? With one condition? His voice was firm. Complete honesty from now on. Even when it's hard. Even when it's embarrassing. I need to know I can trust what's between us. I can do that. I promised. And I meant it. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Then let's start over. It wasn't that simple, of course. Trust, once damaged, doesn't repair overnight. But over the weeks that followed, we rebuilt something stronger than before. Something based on truth rather than calculation. The final piece fell into place 2 months later, at Marcus's holiday party. I'd almost decided not to go, knowing Chris and Vanessa would be there, but Ryan convinced me. You've given them enough power, he said. Let's just go as ourselves. No performances needed. He was right. Again. So we went. No special outfit chosen to impress, no rehearsed lines or choreographed displays of affection, just us as we had become. Vanessa cornered me by the drinks table, eyes bright with what might have been champagne or spite. Still together, I see? She said, her tone suggesting she'd expected otherwise. Happily, I agreed, pouring myself some sparkling water. How are you and Chris? Something flickered behind her perfect smile. We're great. Planning a trip to Bali in the spring. That sounds nice. And I meant it. I genuinely didn't care enough to wish them ill anymore. She seemed thrown by my sincere response, expecting the verbal sparring of our past encounters. When it didn't come, she leaned in, voice lowered. I know what you did, you know. Seeking Ryan out because of his connection to Chris? It was obvious. Pathetic, really. Once those words would have destroyed me. Now they barely registered. I looked at her, really looked, and saw something I'd missed before. Fear. Insecurity. The desperate need to believe her choices were right, her position secure. You know what's funny, Vanessa? I said, keeping my voice gentle. 2 years ago you told me I'd be single forever, like it was the worst fate you could imagine. She stiffened slightly, recognizing her own words. But being single wasn't the punishment you thought it was. It was exactly what I needed. Time to remember who I was, what I wanted. I smiled, not unkindly, so in a weird way I should thank you. Your attempt to hurt me ended up helping me find my way back to myself. Confusion crossed her face, then wariness. Is this some kind of reverse psychology bullshit? I laughed, genuinely amused. No, it's just the truth. I don't need you to be miserable for me to be happy. I don't need to prove you wrong anymore. I'm just free of all that now. As if on cue, Ryan appeared at my side, hand finding the small of my back with easy familiarity. Everything okay here? Everything's perfect, I said, meaning it. I turned back to Vanessa. Enjoy your evening. And Bali. As we walked away, Ryan leaned close to my ear. You meant that, didn't you? All that Zen forgiveness stuff. Surprisingly, yes. I grinned up at him. Don't worry, I'm not becoming a saint or anything. She's still a snake. I just don't need to be the one with the revenge machete anymore. He laughed, the sound warming me from the inside. A revenge machete? That's specific and concerning. It's metaphorical. Mostly. Later that night, as we walked hand in hand toward his car, Ryan stopped suddenly under the glow of a street lamp. Move in with me. The words caught me off guard. What? Move in with me, he repeated. My lease is up next month anyway. We could find a new place together. Are you sure? After everything? Because of everything, he corrected. I love who we are together. I love who you are. The real you, not the revenge mastermind or the heartbroken ex. Just you. My throat tightened. I love you too. And I did. Purely, honestly, without agenda or calculation. Not because he proved Vanessa wrong or helped me get revenge, but because he saw the worst parts of me and stayed anyway. Because he challenged me to be better while accepting who I was. We moved in together the following month. A fresh start in a place that was ours alone. No ghosts from either of our pasts. As for Chris and Vanessa, I heard through mutual friends that they broke up 6 months later. Something about trust issues and differing priorities. I felt a flicker of vindication, then let it go. Their story wasn't mine anymore. 3 months after that, Ryan proposed. Not with some elaborate setup or public display, but on a random Tuesday morning as we were getting ready for work, both of us still in pajamas, coffee mugs in hand. Marry me, he said, as if the thought had just occurred to him. Not to prove anyone wrong or make anyone jealous, just because I can't imagine my life without you in it. I said yes, of course. And when the news spread through our overlapping social circles, a single text arrived from an unsaved number. Congratulations. Guess I was wrong. No name, but I knew. I almost texted back something smug or cutting. Instead, I simply replied, "Thank you, Vanessa." Then I deleted the conversation and went back to planning my future with the man I loved. A future that had nothing to do with her prediction or my revenge, and everything to do with the person I'd become while proving her wrong. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or perfect comebacks. Sometimes it's just being genuinely, authentically happy. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's falling in love with exactly the right person for exactly the right reasons, even if it took all the wrong ones to get you there.